Hi everyone, this is Miss Kabibi from Kabibi Hair, and in this video I'm going to be sharing my top 5 tips for traveling by yourself internationally. Okay, first things first, in terms of safety, never admit that you're traveling by yourself. That's a huge thing. Whenever I go somewhere, I'm always very friendly and I talk to people, and you want to find out where other people are from and share where you're from. But I always tell people that I'm on my way to meet someone. Someone is always expecting me. And this is just a safety precaution because there's safety in numbers, and you're just less likely to be a target if someone knows that there's someone expecting you there or looking out for you. Okay, so that's my first thing with safety. Another thing is check in with your family very often. If you have an iPhone like I do, you can do the whole thing where you use maps and you can drop a pin at your location and text it to your family. I always do that. Whenever I'm going to a new location, I tell my family, okay, this is where I'm going, this is the address. And then whenever I get there, I check in with my family. That way, God forbid, if something were to happen, there's a way to track and trace exactly where I was. So it'll be easier to find me if heaven forbids they need to find me. Okay, in terms of lodging, I personally don't like to stay in hotels. I will, depending on where I'm going. But for the most part, I like to find flats or condos or apartments on Airbnb.com. And I'll go ahead and post a link below so you guys can check it out also. But that's a really great way to get a sense of how people live there and just really soak up the culture as much as possible. You'll also probably be in an area that's less touristy if that's the experience that you're going for, which personally I like to do. In terms of, okay, so my third tip in terms of culture, make sure to read up on wherever it is that you're going so you know how to dress, to blend in. Blending is very important. The last thing I think you want to do when traveling solo is to scream tourist, is to look like you just you're obviously by yourself. And there's what I call the tourist uniform, where you'll see with khaki pants and a polo shirt with a fanny pack and sneakers and the bobby socks with the camera around the neck and maybe the baseball cap. It screams tourist. So before you go, just sort of check out the lay of the land, see how the locals are dressing, and just try to dress to blend in, because the more inconspicuous you are, the better it is for you. The more you can blend in, the less you sort of stand out, the less obvious it is that you're traveling by yourself. Okay, so my fourth tip with traveling solo is plan but don't overplan. Now, for me, I have a tendency to be a little bit type A personality, and I'm big on schedules and itineraries. But when I travel overseas, what I tend to do is I'll pick one thing that I want to do that day. And whether it's to visit a museum or to check out, an art exhibit or just roam the streets, whatever it is, I pick one thing that I want to do that day, do that one thing, and the rest of the day I just roam around. That's really how you get the best experience, I think, is when you just wander the streets. And of course, being mindful of where you are, be safe about it, but don't overplan. Don't feel like you need to have 5 things that you do that day. You're gonna get overwhelmed, it's gonna be exhausting, and you're gonna end up missing out on the actual experience because you're trying to stick to this regimented schedule. So that's my fourth tip. The last tip I have, and I think this is the biggest one, step outside of your comfort zone. When you are by yourself in a different country, nobody knows you. You can totally reinvent yourself. You can explore different sides of your personality. And it's great because you don't have to worry about people judging you, or, now you have to be careful with internet and pictures and videos, but for the most part, let your hair down and have fun. I think for me, one of my favorite stories was when I went to Paris last September, and I actually made some friends when I was there and went out with them to this little, it was sort of like a bar that was underground. I'll post a picture because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna butcher the name. But it was you go in at the street level and it's a restaurant. You go down one level and then it's kind of like a bar, and you go down another level and it was sort of built out like a cave, and you go in there and it's like this wine bar, and they had this stage set up where they had different performers and these like long tables where everyone was just like sitting together and just like drinking wine and cocktails and just like listening to the music and having fun. And so at one point in the show, one of the singers, one of the performers, started pulling people up from the audience to go on stage. And he asked me if I wanted to go, and normally I probably wouldn't do that, but hell yeah, absolutely went on stage and I was dancing, and I actually have video of that, and I'll post a little bit of the video so you guys can see. And then the next thing they did was, like, from the stage you could sort of like step off onto one of the tables that was like in the center of this like cave we were in, and we were like dancing on the tables. And that was like an amazing thing for me to be able to say, like, I went to Paris and I was dancing on the tables and I was dancing on stage, and I stepped outside of my comfort zone. And you have an amazing time when you do that. So just be willing to observe and participate and just try new things when you're traveling, I think, is the biggest thing. So I hope this video was helpful. If you feel any trepidation about traveling solo, I totally understand. My recommendation would be to start by going to an English-speaking country if that's your first language. Don't do what I did. For my first trip, I went to Brazil, but it worked out. I had a great time, but it probably would have been easier for me. But again, I stepped outside of my comfort zone if I had picked an English-speaking country. So perhaps if you live in the States, perhaps try going to Puerto Rico, you know, where it's like still US territory. Yes, there's Spanish, but there's also English, and just get your feet wet and get you comfortable with the idea of traveling by yourself before you make like a huge trip to South America or Europe. But I really encourage you to do that. Like, I feel with traveling, it's really good for your soul, and you learn so much more about yourself and about different people and different cultures. So I can absolutely love it, highly recommend it. So I hope this video was helpful, and let me know if you take a trip and share some pictures with us. All right, see you guys later. Bye.